Hello and welcome back to the Contested Realm. My name's Jesse Meulman-Marshall. Today we've got some interesting gameplay footage here. This is actually from my local tournament at Plenty of Games in Melbourne. It's me on the bottom playing Battlemage against Lee Z on Enchantress. Lee, also known as Sir Lemsip on Discord, if you happen to frequent the Sorcery Discord. So Lee's led off starting first with a Oasis, and I have started off with a Gothic Tower into a Highland Falconer and a Palibri Bats. It's not a bad start. It's a little bit slower, obviously, than the Spectral Stalker with Voidwalk, but it's also one more power. So it's going to take me a little bit longer, particularly being on the draw, to be able to connect up with Lee and try and do some damage with this Falconer Bats combo. So it's a little bit slower, but at least it's 3 power. And Lee's come down with an Apprentice Wizard off a tower onto the middle site. So I can spot a Crown of the Victor, and it looks like another tower in my hand there. So this could be a 3-drop. Oh no, it's a Ruins. So moving up the Bats and the Falconer, and then no 2 or 3-drop on this turn. So that's actually pretty bad. As Battlemage, if you play a 2-drop on turn 1 off a tower, you want to be following that up with at least another 2-drop, if not a 3-drop off another tower on turn 2. So I'm kind of stalled out a little bit, and Lee's also got a blocker there in the Apprentice Wizard. Elects to trade with the Falconer, with the Wizard, and then 3 mana available here to Lee, and he's passing the turn back. Right, so that's a bit of a relief that there was no turn 3 play. It could have even been something like a Wildfire onto my Bats, onto the Bats and the Falconer, which would have been really bad if Lee had another tower there, or another piece of acceleration. And I've gone a tower, but accelerating into a Flaming Sword, which again, I can see a second Flaming Sword and a Crown of the Victor in my hand. So that's not ideal. As the Battlemage player, you want all of your plays at this point in the game to be presenting threats to your opponent that they have to deal with. So Lee, I only presented the threats on turn 1 that Lee needed to immediately deal with, and he's slowly dealt with both of those, the Falconer and the Bats, over the succeeding 2 turns, with that Thunderstorm coming down there to deal with the Bats. And then that Thunderstorm is going to continue to present a threat over the next 2 turns of attacking me on those middle sites there. So now I'm a little bit on the back foot. Played out another lone tower, so it's not giving me the extra mana. Play out that second Flaming Sword. So again, I'm giving Lee the time here to set up and really develop his side of the board and present his own threats to me, which once you're on the back foot with Battlemage and you've lost the tempo, it can be pretty hard to recover. So Lee's playing in abundance, which is going to mean next turn Lee's got access to heaps of mana, and then animating a Thunderstorm to hit me for 4. So I'm going down to 16 and Lee's down to 18. So I'm sitting here with a 5-power Battlemage that's stuck on my backside. I've got no grapple shot in hand from what I can see, no blink to get out from onto Lee's side of the board. And it looks like I'm playing out a Rolling Boulder, which is going to hit, and that's not supposed to be my bin. It's going to hit the Thunderstorm and then end up on top of Lee's Enchantress doing 4 damage. But of course, without a blink now to get myself out of the line of fire of that Rolling Boulder, I'm going to have to be very careful of copying a return serve of that. And at this point, Lee's threatening 5 damage with the Abundance, which is able to pretty easily turn on here using the Browse. But I don't think he's animated the Abundance with the Browse, but he's still got plenty of mana. So a Browse with an Abundance in play, Lee's effectively got access to 9 mana here, spending only 1 of them on a Browse, and then pretty much anything else in his deck is going to be affordable. And he's got the choice of the best spell among the next 7 on the top of his spellbook. So this is a pretty hot start. There were a couple of turns there where Lee wasn't doing much, but I wasn't able to punish that with the Battlemage. And the Rolling Boulder coming straight back here does feel like a little bit of a positive. If I can, for instance, play my own Blink next turn, attack onto the Ruins on Lee's side of the board with my 2 Flaming Swords, then I could potentially be ahead enough in the race to get Lee to Death's Door first. But I really desperately need to get that Battlemage into combat this turn. And now that Lee's out of line with me in terms of column, it's really going to have to be Blink. Grapple Shot's not going to be good enough. So a core comes down, and I'm seeing Chain Lightning and still that Crown of the Victor in hand, which is really not ideal. So it might be something that pretty much spells the death knell for any Battlemage game when you have to walk forward with your Battlemage and you've got nothing else going on the board. Feels pretty bad. So here we are with 2 Flaming Swords, a Crown of the Victor, a Rolling Boulder, and a Ruby Core on the Battlemage. This is exactly the kind of Battlemage game that I don't like to have. I'm only playing a small number of artifacts in this deck, and I've drawn almost all of them. I think we're just missing Tor's Hammer Trinket, and we'd have the full complement of power-up artifacts from within this deck. There are a lot of minions in there, but we've only managed to draw just the Highland Falconer at this stage, which searched out the bats. So an unfortunate draw that's leading to a lot of stalling out and giving Lee now the capacity with those 3 cards drawn off the Grandmaster Wizard to easily activate the Abundance, hit me for 5, and then with 9 mana with the Abundance, still have plenty left over to do. Now, of course, the downside as the Enchantress player of attacking with the Abundance is that you do give your opponent some mana, so long as the opponent's not on your own sites. So if Lee attacked forward with the Abundance, it would be overlapping 2 of my sites, which would mean that the Abundance's effect would be applying to my sites, doubling my mana. Lee can of course see that I've only got 2 cards left in hand. A Selfsame Simulacrum comes down, copying the Grandmaster Wizard. So maybe Lee doesn't need to try and put me to Death's Door this turn. The Thunderstorm's going to do 3 to me, put me to 9. And then the amount of power that Lee's got left on the board next turn is going to definitely allow her to put my Battlemage to Death's Door no matter what I do. So the Battlemage is currently sitting at 5 power, because I don't think the Crown of the Victor is active at the moment. And the question is whether I'm going to use the Chain Lightning in my hand to activate the Crown of the Victor and attack for 8, but then Lee's going to be still left on 6. So I've got a Highland Princess, which is another poor draw in hand. I think we've got Highland Princess, Chain Lightning, and another card that I haven't quite spotted. Looks like a Lightning Bolt, perhaps. So the Chain Lightning comes down, kills both the Grandmaster Wizards, meaning that Lee doesn't have a blocker. That's all my 4 of my 5 mana spent, so there was no way that I could get the Princess down this turn and still have enough mana to Chain Lightning both the blockers. I think the plan was, initially looking at the board, if Lee didn't have 2 blockers, that I could Chain Lightning the Grandmaster Wizard this turn and then have another play. But unfortunately, with Lee having 2 blockers there, I had to Chain Lightning both of them, which cost me 4 mana, meaning I couldn't make any other plays. So I'm putting Lee down to 6, but Lee's got me at Death's Door on the board, basically, here. Because as long as Lee can play a spell of the many in his hand using 9 mana, which is almost impossible for him not to be able to do at this point, he's going to be able to put me to Death's Door by activating the Thunderstorm and the Abundance. Sorry, I need to play 2 spells, but still, that's not beyond the realms of possibility with 9 mana. So a Twist of Fate comes down first, activating the Thunderstorm. That also coincidentally deals 3 to me and gains Lee 3 life. So the Thunderstorm's attack puts me down to 2, and I'm now at Death's Door on the board because the Thunderstorm is going to deal 3 to me at the end of turn. An Apprentice Wizard comes down, draws Lee a card, and then the Enchantress moves away just in case. And a Wildfire comes down as well. So what's kind of interesting here is that I could try and run to the left and get away from the Abundance, because the Abundance can't attack to the left of our screen at the moment because of that void space. But all Lee has to do then is draw a side, tap, play the side with the Enchantress to fill in that void space on square number 2, and then the Abundance can attack across and kill me. So the Battlemage is just going to do that anyway, attack in vain, get Lee down to 1, because unfortunately the Twist of Fate put Lee up to 9, which has put him just beyond the range of me being able to get into Death's Door this turn. And I don't think I can get enough defenders down to stop that Wildfire from taking me out the following turn, or to stop any of Lee's spells. So we look at this board as it is, the Wildfire moves across, and then Lee's just going to be able to activate the Wildfire on his turn and attack me for the win. So a very quick game 1 there. The Enchantress outmaneuvering the Battlemage, and unfortunately the Battlemage just not managing to put enough pressure on. You know, as I said, on those early turns, it's really important as a Battlemage player to have something to follow up your first couple of threats. So we had the Highland Falconer, which was a decent start, and it did take Lee a couple of turns to deal with both the Falconer trading for the Wizard, and then the Bats taking the first hit from the Thunderstorm. And if we'd had 2 relevant plays to follow up there, rather than nothing followed by Flaming Sword, then it could have been a much, much closer game. But as it was, Lee didn't have the requirement to be spending any resources dealing with my board, because there wasn't really one, and instead Lee was able to just fully develop his board and get aggressive. So a little bit of mulliganing going on here, an Infiltrate going down because it's just really not very good in this matchup. The Enchantress's minions all effectively have charge, and in that last game, all the Infiltrate managed to do was kill a Thunderstorm that had already done 2 strikes and plenty of damage anyway, which is not really what you want. The Battlemage in this matchup wants to be the aggressor rather than having to respond to the enemy's plays. So we've drawn off the mulligan there a Ruby Core. It looks like we've got a Falconer, a Tower again. And anytime we've got a core in our opening hand, that's excellent. Ruby Core is fantastic. It means we're fixed for our fire threshold. And we'll start off on the play this time with a Falconer and a Bats. So it looks pretty similar to last game. Differences are, of course, the Battlemage is on the play here, and we've got that Ruby Core, which is making our next couple of turns hopefully a bit stronger. Enchantress also starts off with the same Oasis, but an Amethyst Core, so also a faster start on the other side of the board. So drawing a spell here for the Battlemage. Generally, my first couple of turns as Battlemage, I'll be drawing spells unless there's something really wrong with the sites that I've mulliganed into. But here we're pretty happy. We've got 3 mana, including the core. We've got 2 fire, 2 air threshold. And again, no play to follow up, so that's interesting. No, looks like we've got a Browse and a Tor's Hammer Trinket. So Firebolts takes out all 3 of our aggressive minions. And we're kind of in danger of heading down a similar path to last game, except we do have this Browse, which is nice. So we'll go up to 3 air threshold off that Gothic Tower, and we'll play out the Browse and see what we can find. So I've seen a Spectral Stalker, Chain Lightning, a Blink, a Sacred Scarabs, and what else have we got there? A Flaming Sword. So off these kind of browsers, it can be tempting to take things like Flaming Sword because they have the most upside in the long game. And I think that is what I took there. But there's also the importance of that mobility spell, as I was saying earlier. But I do have the mobility spell in hand as well. So that's why I've taken the sword there, because the Battlemage can now get into combat this turn, gets all the way across the board, hits in for 3. And now if Lee tries to play out minions to block the Battlemage as a way to mitigate my damage, I now have the trump card because I've got the Flaming Sword in hand. This is the situation where the Flaming Sword is excellent, when you're already up in their face and the sword lets you effectively counteract their plays when they try and defend your Battlemage strikes. Where the sword is not so good is if you're either not up in their face yet because you haven't drawn the mobility spell, or if you're not really planning to attack anywhere near their avatar. So as it is this time, we've got the Flaming Sword comes down and we attack with the Battlemage because we're happy to be on 4 mana. And this is one of the key things that the core allows you to do as a Battlemage player, is I was able to start getting in with the Battlemage a turn earlier and still play my 4-drop. So if I didn't have that core, I would have actually had to tap the Battlemage to play a site there instead. So Lee's got the Mirror Realm, and then following it up with an Apprentice Wizard to block, except of course Lee realizing that the Battlemage is just going to be able to get straight past that blocker using the Flaming Sword, so there's not much point playing that there. So he animates the Flood using the Apprentice Wizard, and then attacks me with the Flood for 4. So I'm going to strike in here on the Apprentice Wizard, only taking 1 because I'm fighting the Apprentice Wizard, and the attack, the strike that the Battlemage does on the Wizard is going to splash the full 4 damage onto the Flood. So only taking 1 back, but still attacking in for 4 on the Flood, and we get to draw a card because we've attacked and killed the Wizard, and then we play the Gaia Hippogriffs using the 4 mana. So again, reaching that 4 mana point with the Battlemage, very impactful because I've been able to play the Flaming Sword and now the Gaia Hippogriffs in consecutive turns, but able to still be activating and using the Battlemage because of that core. So just showing you how powerful that core was for the tempo in this particular game. We've got Lee down to 10 as well with that attack from the Hippogriffs. And now we've got an Observatory coming down on Lee's side, which is fixing some spells on the top of his deck. And then we've got the Infiltrate on the Hippogriffs, annoyingly taking control of those from me because, as I was saying earlier, in Game 1, the Battlemage player wants to be presenting threats and having the opponent have to deal with them. It is annoying to lose the Hippogriffs, but you can see here we've now got, I think, a Lightning Bolt in hand that's going to enable us to then deal with the Hippogriffs, which cost Lee 4 mana to take off us, so we're effectively counteracting Lee's play, and we're still getting to attack in with our Battlemage for 4, or for 5 if we use the Trinket. So 5 mana, putting Lee down to 5, which is crucial because we're now threatening with the trinket next turn to put Lee down to Death's Door. And still able to remove that Hippogriffs just so it can't get up to any shenanigans by using the Lightning Bolt. And now looking at the hand there, we've got a Blink and a Leap attack, which is going to make it pretty hard for Lee to evade us once he's at Death's Door as well. So if we can successfully use that Tor's Hammer Trinket, which should be back in hand, there it goes. If we can successfully use that Tor's Hammer Trinket to get the Battlemage up to 5 and attack Lee down to Death's Door, then we are going to be able to finish Lee off, hopefully, with the Leap attack and or the Blink the following turn. So the Battlemage comes across for 5, puts Lee to Death's Door. The Enchantress was running across the Mirror Realm towards the corner, but it looks like Lee's struggling for plays at this point that are going to disrupt the Battlemage's momentum, because with the 5 mana, or the 6 mana from the core, there wasn't actually anything that was going to come down that previous turn. So the Highland Falconer Sacred Scarabs comes down just as another option. I can now blink the Scarabs onto the top of the Battlemage and then attack any of those sites on the back row for 4 undefendable damage, effectively, or 3 undefendable damage. So Lee in a bit of a bind here with that Enchantress, and having a think about whether there's any way out of this pickle. So moving across with the Enchantress onto the Observatory in the corner. See if we can get away. Apprentice Wizard comes down onto the Mirror Realm as a blocker. So that is going to protect Lee effectively from just me moving in and attacking. Tor's Hammer Trinket back in hand, of course. But the Leap attack and the Blink with the mobility going to allow me to get right in on top of the Enchantress and finish the game. So thanks, Lee, for 2 really interesting games. Enchantress managing to get out there with game 1, beating the Battlemage, taking the tempo, and then the Battlemage never recovering. And then Battlemage in game 2 on the play, managing to keep the foot on the accelerator. Lee had Abundance, Simulacrum, Poison Nova, all sorts of strong but slightly slower cards in hand, and the Battlemage was able to get in underneath. So hopefully you enjoyed that exhibition of the Enchantress and the Battlemage, a more controlling, slower list on the Enchantress side, which builds up this huge advantage and uses massive auras to pound down on the enemy, and then the Battlemage, which is trying to sneak in there with the artifacts and the low-cost minions to finish the game quickly. A really interesting matchup. Thanks again to Lee for being part of those games, and we'll have more gameplay footage coming up very soon on the Contested Realm. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.